Shalom. When people talk about Jewish history, they basically say, well, they tried to kill us, they were mostly successful, it's been terrible, let's go on. Or let's remember, or let's mourn. And actually, Jewish history has not been so bad. In fact, it's been a lot better than most people's history. Well, first of all, we're still here. But I want to read you just a couple of paragraphs from this very interesting little one-volume book called The Amazing Adventures of the Jewish People by Max Diamant. If you're going to read one little volume history of the Jewish people, it's really a good one to read. We use it in our conversion classes. Let me just read you a few passages from there. On page 85, he says the following. In retrospect, the Jews had not fared too badly for the first 1,000 years of their exile, considering that scores of other nations in the same millennium had lost kith, kin, and country. For 1,000 years, the Jews had lived in the expanding societies of various empires, including Islamic. They had lived in a world where scholars were admired. They had mingled with aristocrats and flirted with the sciences. They had lived in a world which generally tolerated the Jews but despised the Christians. And then he goes on to say the following on page 93. If anyone wonders where the Jews were during these centuries of invasion, the answer is right there, in the midst of it. That the Jews survived this general devastation in remarkably good shape was in itself an amazing achievement. Now listen to this. He says, the Jews are all too often portrayed during these invasion centuries as suffering lambs prey to anti-Semitic wolves. What we tend to forget is that this is an age of calamity for everyone, Jews, Christians, and pagans. The invading barbarians never inquired into the religious affiliation of those they killed. If Jews expected the invaders merely to ask them to step aside because they were Jews, they expected too much. The invading hordes from the east raped and killed Jews, Christians, and pagans impartially. So that's not saying that it was good, but that there was equal opportunity offense by the invaders, and Jews weren't particularly singled out. But then listen to this. It says, not only did the Jews have the good luck to survive the invasions without terminal damage, they also had the additional luck to come to the attention of the new rulers of Europe as a people of enterprise. Theodoric the Great of Italy set the future pattern. As early as the 6th century CE, he invited the Jews to come to his capital in Rome, Venice, Milan, to spark commercial activity, help bring prosperity to his realm. Others crowned heads of Europe followed his lead. And as if this was not enough, the church added yet one more blessing. At this point in history, it had not yet given the Jews an ultimatum to convert to Christianity. Jews were permitted to stay non-Christians at a time when no one else was granted to such a concession. Then he ends provocatively, why was everybody so good to the Jews? Herein lies an incredible tale. And then he continues in the next chapter on page 94, saying the following. Two general misconceptions are held by many about the Jews during the Middle Ages. They lived in ghettos and that they were nothing but peddlers and grubby moneylenders. Neither was the case. Until the 14th century, Jews were generally free to live wherever they chose, were far from being pitiful creatures. They had it, in fact, better than the majority of the Christian population. To keep his realm intact, he continues on page 95, the feudal king or lord demanded an oath of loyalty in the name of Jesus from all his subjects. As the Jews refused to take such an oath for religious reasons, they were exempted from doing so. Instead, they swore loyalty in the name of the king and thus became servants of the king instead of subjects in Jesus. But this did not enslave the Jews to the king. Instead, it freed them from the feudal restrictions binding on the serfs. Along with the nobles and high-ranking clergy, the Jews had the right to move about freely on horse or in carriage, were able to carry out their business transactions. These are dangerous times to travel. The Jews had the same rights as nobles to carry arms. Few dared to rob a Jewish traveling merchant. For doing so, it would be like robbing the king. There were, of course, exceptions we shall note later, but we must remember we were dealing with an entire continent over a period of 5 centuries. Many injustices can be found in so vast a space over such a long span of time. By and large, however, listen to this sentence, Jews during the High Middle Ages had it better than 95% of the population enjoying privileges the serfs did not have. Now, of course, things get bad later on. Expulsions from many nations, and of course culminating in the horrible tragedy of the Holocaust. But for lots and lots and lots of Jewish history, as Max Diamant is saying, the Jews had it better than most people and didn't do so badly. So it's something important to remember when teaching and reflecting on Jewish history.